this mother continent will only rise when we begin to appreciate our own. The lesson of history is one and consistent, that it is only we who can change the continent of Africa. This desire for change is not one that is new. It has been with us. And when today we are talking about leadership, and I listen to my good friend Ezekiel, and I agree with him when he says that leadership is not about titles. In the continent of Africa, we are quick to call individuals who occupy public office leaders. I don't. Leadership is about the ability to serve without expectation of any benefit. Let me do what Nigerians do by saying that I stand on the protocols already established. But that does not make it unimportant to acknowledge Eric, the coordinator from Liberia, Lydia, and of course Ezekiel, and all of you who are present in this assembly. It gladdens my heart to be present here to share my thoughts with you on the subject of leadership. I asked that song by Mbaraka Munshehe Mwaruka from Tanzania to be played, because Munshehe was one of the greatest singers that Africa has ever produced. And that song is a call to young Africans to be revolutionary, because they are the agents of change and the shield for the continent of Africa. One day, I hope that the Tanzanians present here will cause that song to be subtitled so that it's understood by others. The other song that I would have wanted to be played is by the Congolese musician Franklin Bukaka, Afrique Bujara, in which he talks about the continent of Africa, and which used to be a tune during our news here in Kenya for a long time. Oh, Africa. Some of you will remember. Those were great songs. And I say this because we live in a continent where it's easy to appreciate songs sung by others, but we never appreciate our very own. And I want to use this occasion to remind us that this mother continent will only rise when we begin to appreciate our own. The lesson of history is one and consistent, that it is only we who can change the continent of Africa. This desire for change is not one that is new. It has been with us. And when today we are talking about leadership, and I listen to my good friend Ezekiel, and I agree with him when he says that leadership is not about titles. In the continent of Africa, we are quick to call individuals who occupy public office leaders. I don't. Leadership is about the ability to serve without expectation of any benefit. Until the day that we recognize that, our continent will never realize our potential. You know, this morning as I was walking between 5 and 5:30, I asked myself, what should I talk about? And even yesterday, I agonized whether I should write a speech. And I said I should not. And if I'm to write one, I'll write one after I've spoken for your own records. But this morning, I was thinking about the question of leadership, particularly how leadership of the political kind has kept Africa in the lower rungs of human development. And my mind went to the early days of the struggle for African liberation, and why it is that we, after having been humiliated through slavery, having been humiliated through colonization, then decided that we must regain our independence. And this was not confined to the continent of Africa. The spirit of liberation was one that was evident throughout the African diaspora. You only have to read about the lives of Africans in the Caribbean, such as Sylvester Williams, who are the founding fathers of Pan-Africanism in the 19th century. Some say even in the 17th century. You only have to listen to the early thoughts of people like Marcus Mosiagavi in order to appreciate what leadership was all about. You only have to listen to great Pan-Africanists like W.B. Du Bois, who died, as Ghanaians know, and was buried in Ghana. You only have to listen to John Henry Clark to know that the desire for liberation through moral leadership was alive and well from within and without the continent. You only have to listen to that famous speech by Martin Luther King Jr. in the month of August in 1963, the speech, "I Have a Dream." Many do not know that, in fact, Martin Luther would not have said he had a dream until a famous American lady singer in the audience raised her voice. The lady was Mahalia Jackson, and told him, "Martin, tell them about the dream that you had." That is when he left his written speech and he started talking about the dream that he had. Martin Luther King Jr. did not occupy any public office. He was a moral leader, and the world remembers him today because he stood for something and he was prepared to die for it. We must be prepared to die for what we believe in. And I also thought about many things this morning. And I thought about the great Kwame Nkrumah and how very early on, from 1945 in Manchester in the United States of America, when he attended the Pan-African meeting, and the idea of liberation came to him. And when he came back to Ghana, which was then the Gold Coast, Africa was never to be the same again. And you will remember that before he was admitted at the University of Lincoln in the United States of America, where he was to meet Nigeria's Nnamdi Azikiwe, when he was asked to write his personal statement, this is what he said: so much to be done, so little time. So much to be done, so little time. And in 1958, in Accra, Ghana, he called all Africans of goodwill to Accra. There was no internet, there was no social media, but they assembled there. And the spirit of change started. And he did not restrict it to politicians, Diosagie for himself. He wanted all Africans to have their hands on deck to change the continent of Africa economically, socially, culturally, and otherwise. And he did not stop there. In 1961, he was present in Casablanca, Morocco, with the king, Hassan of Morocco, talking about Africa and about leadership, because he recognized that there is nothing that is as important as leadership. And he did not stop there. In 1963, between the 22nd and 25th days of May, under the aegis of Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, a meeting was held. 32 heads of states and governments in Africa and liberation movements assembled in Addis. Many do not know that at that time, Addis Ababa was never to be the headquarters of the African Union. The Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah wanted it to be in Accra, and Gamal Abdel Nasser of the United Arab Republic, now called Egypt, wanted it to be in Cairo. And that is how it was said that Addis should be a temporary headquarter pending resolution. Is it Accra or Cairo? And of course, Addis has remained the headquarters. Why was that meeting important in 1963? It was important because all those who were politicians at that time loved Africa, all of them, without exception. I read and reread the 32 speeches. I read and reread them. Even the ones who became monsters later spoke sense. I remember the speech of David Dacko of what is now Central African Republic, saying, in part, I am happy to be a part of this meeting because it is only in unity that we can make Africa great. I remember the speech of Julius Kambarage Nyerere of Tanzania, saying we have not come here to remind ourselves about unity. Unity is what is going to make Africa great. But the most iconic speech of it all, of them all, was of course the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah's, delivered on the 25th day of May, 1963. With a sense of urgency, he told Africans, let us unite now. Let us live here with one currency as the decision we have made. Let us live here having agreed that we'll have one army. Let us live here having agreed that we'll have one foreign policy. And I'm suggesting that indeed we put together a committee of ministers to come up with those decisions. And I'm suggesting that we even choose the capital of Africa now. I do not know what others think he said, But I suggest that it should be in Leopoldville, which is now Kinshasa. We did not listen to him, and we ended up with the Organization of African Unity, OAU. Leadership. 1 year later, African leaders met again, invited by Gamal Abdel Nasser in Cairo. And the Osagiefor thought that there would be unity on that day. It never happened. 1 year later, in 1965, there was another meeting in Accra, Ghana. People never talk about it. They never talk about it because 1 year later, the Osagiefor was overthrown while on an official visit to Hanoi, Vietnam, via Peking, China. Peking, now called Beijing. We say this because we are gathered here as Africans and we are talking about leadership. There is a book that I commend to all of us. It's written by a Nigerian, Adeke Adebayo. The Curse of Berlin, Africa After the Cold War. In Berlin, they divided us into the 54 officially recognized countries that we now have. So that we have Togo and Ghana. And the Moba of Togo speak French, and the Moba of Ghana speak English and B-Moba. In fact, the Moba of Ghana are called the B-Moba, British Mobas. That's how we are divided. Many of you here from different countries will remember that leadership was at the very heart of it. Those of you from the Democratic Republic of Congo, I want you to go and read the letter written by Patrice Emery Lumumba, the man for whom I am named, to his wife, Josephine Opango. And read that letter, one of the most important letters ever to have emerged from a prison. And he says that even if the history of Congo is not written by him, it will be written by Congolese. Patrice Emery Lumumba was only aged 35 or 36 at that time. Leadership. He knew he was going to die. And I urge you to read the book by Ludo Devet, The Assassination of Patrice Emery Lumumba, to see how brave he was, even as he faced death. The Chui of Ghana have a saying that if you run after a coward for too long, you will meet his courage. Poverty, disease, bad politics have run after us for too long. It is time for them to meet our courage. And that is why we are talking about leadership. And it is upon us to provide that leadership. You know, in 1983, in his little book, The Trouble with Nigeria, Chinua Achebe writes of Nigeria, but it could very well be about Africa, that the problem of Nigeria, and I dare say Africa, is simply and squarely one of leadership. Until the day we resolve that problem, our hostels, our universities, our sectors will never be what we want them to be. It is urgent business. Those of you who are from Zimbabwe will remember the many words of Robert Gabriel Mugabe before he overstayed in power. He was as clear as clarity can be about African dignity. You cannot be a leader if you have no dignity. Dignity is the mother's milk of true leadership. Those of you who are from Mozambique, and you want to know that the name of your country, Mozambique, is after an Arab sheikh called Ibn Bik. That is how Mozambique acquired its name. The home of Samora, Moises Machel. And I want you to go and read about leadership, not just from Samora, but from Eduardo Mondlane, and how they died for that which is good and right. Leadership at all levels is what is going to change the continent of Africa. I'm focusing on these individuals because, as they say in Hindu philosophy, when the politics of a country stumbles, everything crumbles. No matter how well-intentioned you are, if the toxicity of politics is alive and well, then everybody dies. If you doubt me, you go to Khartoum now, if you can go at all. Those of you who are from La Côte d'Ivoire, and you will remember in La Côte d'Ivoire, in the early days of Félix Houphouët-Boigny, although a Francophile, he was proud. And if you want to meet any proud people on earth, meet Côte d'Ivoirians. They love their country. And go to Abidjan or Grand Bassam, and you see pride. Pride is not a bad thing if it is not something that leads you into arrogance, because pride is the mother of excellence. When you are proud, you want to do things well. Those of you who are from Mali, many of you who are from Mali do not remember that there once lived a great man there, Modibo Keita. Modibo Keita and the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah formed a union which did not go very far, and Patrice Emery Lumumba was prepared to be part of that union. Leadership, selfless leadership. Those of you who are from Namibia, and there are two great politicians who came out of that land, Namibia. One of them did not even go very far, but those of you who are from Namibia and those Africans, I want you to go and read the life not of Sam Nujoma, but Andimba, Haman Toivo, Yatoivo. These were great men. And what they said is that in order to serve the continent of Africa, we must be dedicated to her. Those from Lesotho, the island kingdom, the home of my friend King Lethie. See what has happened. You may have had your problems, but leadership is about dedication and being culturally aware. I mention Lesotho because part of the African problem is that culturally we have been decimated. We have a saying in Kiswahili, mwachamila ni mtumwa. If you abandon your culture, you become a slave. If Africa is going to realize the potential, the positive aspects of our culture must be given their pride of place. Those of you who are from Nigeria, I've said it times without number when I'm in Nigeria, whether I'm in Nasarawa or in Kaduna or in Anambra or in Bayelsa, I keep on saying the day Nigeria gets it right, that is the day Africa wakes up. You only have to read the story of the early years of Nigeria during the days of the great Zik of Africa. Many of you do not know that Nnamdi Azikiwe was called the great Zik of Africa because he loved the continent, as indeed did Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. And you may not know, you Nigerians, in 1970, the king of Saudi Arabia was sick and went to be treated at the hospital in Ibadan. Today, we go to London and Dubai because of lack of leadership. But I want you to travel around the world. Some of the best doctors in the world, in the United States, in Europe, in America, are Nigerians, Liberians, Ghanaians, Kenyans. You go to Columbus, Ohio. There are no less than 65,000 Liberians, and there is a consulate in Columbus, Ohio. Liberia, Monrovia, that country that became the pilgrimage site for African Americans. What leadership have we had there? One can go on and mention many of the countries. In Benin, the home of Hubert Maga. Tanzania, I've already said, the home of Julius Kambarage Nyerere, that great man. Zambia, the home of Kenneth David Kaunda. Leadership. When he died, Kaunda, Julius Nyerere, when he left office, you know, they looked for bank accounts for them all over the world. Of Kaunda, they said that he had only the equivalent of $8,000 after 24 years in power. Honesty. Of Kambarage Nyerere, those of you from Tanzania will know, he had a modest house in Butiama and his jeshi la kujenga taifa, his own army that improved that house. Look at our current political leaders. I was asked the day before yesterday, what is the dominating system of government in Africa? And I said, it is kakistocratic kleptocracy. And I had to break it down. I told them, kakistocracy is a government led by your very worst. And kleptocracy is a government led by thieves, like Mobutu Sese Seko Kukumbendu wa Zambanga. It is about leadership at all levels. You know, I go to Rwanda often. And I remember Rwanda in 1993. And I remember for 100 days, the world was silent as the genocide was taking place. Optimists wrote the obituary of Rwanda, said, they have died, they will never rise again. But through leadership, I want you to go to Kigali now. See order. Order. Don't be cheated in Nairobi by the expressway. It looks clean. Go underneath. And you'll see the dirt. In Rwanda, when you are jogging from hill to hill, there is a provision for the pedestrians. Even the borders or the Okadas of Nigeria are controlled. In Kenya, Uganda, and Mali, they carry 3 people and sometimes sofa sets and dogs on one border. Once again, it is leadership. It can be done. No excuse is what we are saying. We have had excuses for too long. We have said that we were colonized. We were not the only ones who were colonized. You know, the Arabs have a saying that when the Pharaoh was asked, why have you become a tyrant? The Pharaoh said, because nobody stopped me. We create tyrants because we do not stop them. It is our duty to raise our voices at all times. You know, there is a book I commend to you. It's written by Henry Gibson, an enemy of the people. He says that the speaker of the truth is bound to be unpopular. And even when the masses catch up with him, he remains unpopular, she remains unpopular. And he ends up by saying, the strongest man or woman in the world is one who stands alone for the truth. There are men of God here. You know, my views about Christ are sometimes contentious. Some even say blasphemous. But I ask critical questions. At one time, I was asked if I lived in the days of Jesus, which of the disciples do I think I would have been? And I said I would have been Thomas, without doubt. I would have asked Christ, oh, I want to see. I would have been Philip. I would have asked Christ, we have seen you for several years, but we now want to see the Father. I would have asked. Because I would not be the only person who asked such a question. John the Baptist himself, who baptized Christ on the day before his death, while he's in prison, sends 2 disciples to Christ to ask of him, Christ, are you the one, or we should wait for another? And Christ does not tell him whether he's the one. He simply says, go and tell him the blind see, the deaf hear, the lepers are healed, and the gospel is being preached throughout the world. And then John dies. A good leader must doubt. Doubt. Because it is in doubting that you confirm, and it is in doubting that you have the scientific approach to issues. If you doubt, if you don't doubt, you are not a leader. But when you doubt, give room to be convinced. A good leader must not think that he or she has the monopoly of wisdom and knowledge, because those who think they have the monopoly of wisdom and knowledge often lead their countries through shortcuts to chaos. You know, there was a leader in Equatorial Guinea called Marcius Nguema Biyogo. He was overthrown in 1979 by his cousin, I think his nephew, who is the current leader of Equatorial Guinea. And when he was the leader, he thought he was God's gift to the world. When the news was about to be aired on television, he would emerge, his image would emerge from the clouds, and they would say, Miraglo Unigo, the unique miracle. And when he was overthrown, he was running in the bush, and they found him with a sack of money, the equivalent of 6 million United States dollars. He was executed. Leadership must not be selfish, because it is all in vain. If you want to lead with no excuse, you should have no burden. Today, the problem of Africa are men and women who occupy positions of leadership and influence who are greedy. And you remember many times people ask, are they not satisfied? Greed does not ask that question, because greed is insatiable. Greed can never be satisfied. You know, this continent of ours is a great continent in prospect. Think about statistics. I think about how we still are divided. We are the only continent on earth that still is referred to as Anglophone, to say that we speak English. Francophone, to say that some of us speak French. Lusophone, to say that some speak Portuguese. Arabophone, to say that some speak Arabic. And very soon we will be called Sinophone because some of us speak Chinese or Mandarin. The battle in Cameroon is sometimes depicted as if it were a conflict between English-speaking and French-speaking. We must exorcise the ghost of dominance, being dominated by others. And it can only come through leadership. And that leadership must come from us. Whether you are in Monrovia, in Liberia, the question that I'm asking you to come up with today, what are you going to do with it in Monrovia? When you are in Dakar, in Senegal, that home of a great African, Leopold Sedar Senghor, what are you going to do about it when you are in the Gambia, the home of Dawuda Kairaba Jawara? What are you going to do about it? We must provide leadership at all levels because, as Kwame Nkrumah once said, we can solve our economic and political problems, but the most difficult problem to solve is the problem of our attitude and our mental capacity, because the colonial project was of such a nature that it taught us to hate ourselves. We must no longer hate ourselves. We must no longer think that movies made in Hollywood and Bollywood are the movies that we must watch. We must now have movies made in Nollywood and Bongowood and Riverwood in Africa. That is the only way in which we are going to provide leadership in that sector. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Why are we not providing leadership in that area? How can it be that our leadership in our sports sector is dominated from outside? If you go to rural Kenya, they are betting on whether Sunderland will beat Aston Villa. They are not betting on whether Abiola Babes is going to beat Afia Guinea de Conakry, the home of Ahmed Seko Touré. And yet sport is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I'm saying that leadership must be at that level in sports. What about our music? Why must it be, and I'm not saying that they don't sing well, why must it be Shakira? Why must it be Celine Dion? Why not Mbaraka? Why not Burna Boy? Why not Harmonize? When it comes to our books, who are you reading? In economics, are you reading Zambia's Ndrambi Samoyo? Are you reading Sembene Osman? Are you reading Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie? Who are you reading? Because leadership is at all levels. Today, our continent finds ourselves in a midlife crisis. And you see many conflicts in Sudan, in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, in Tigray and Amhara region of Ethiopia, in northern Mozambique, in Cameroon. We are seeing those conflicts taking place. In Mozambique, they are in the streets. Because one of our problems, because we don't trust each other, even when we are called upon to enter into an election, we can't print our own ballots. And when we are called upon to count 8 million votes in Kenya, we can't count. And the United States of America counts 80 million votes in one night. In Kenya, we can't count 8 for 2 weeks. And even when we have counted, we don't trust our counting. Leadership is about trust, vigilance, and verification. You cannot lead when there is no modicum of trust in the things that we do. Have you ever wondered why we print our ballots outside of the continent? Have you ever wondered why we print our money outside of the continent? Have you ever wondered why we print our national identities outside of the continent? Have you ever wondered why we print our passports outside of the continent of 1.4 billion? We must trust ourselves. And Ezekiel, I can't agree with you more. All of us have a responsibility. All of us. Those of you who are Catholics here, how many Catholics are present in the assembly? Even if you are not Catholics, I want you to go and read a great Catholic, a great Christian, Martin Luther. He was alone. And those of you who are Pentecostal evangelicals must know, but for Martin Luther, there was no reform in the church. Then one day, after much reflection, on the 31st day of October, the year 1517, he penned the 95 Theses at the church in Wittenberg. And this is what he said, among other things, that the time to speak the truth is not a favorable time. Truth must be spoken at all times, the consequences notwithstanding. And he was executed, Martin Luther. And that is how the church, that is how the Bible was translated into all the languages that we now have. Leadership is about knowledge, as you rightly said. And for those of you who are Muslims, because we must be aware of those differences, I want you to read the history of Islam. And there are 4 caliphs in the early days of Islam: Omar, Abu Bakr, and Uthman. And the 4th one of them was Ali, about whom the split between Sunni and Shia came about. Ali was meant to be the first caliph, but he said, for the sake of Islam, I leave it to Abu Bakr and then ultimately Omar. A good leader must be able to surrender for the overall good. If you do not and are not prepared to surrender for the overall good, because it is you, because we must massage your ego, then you are not a leader. You are a megalomaniac. And Africa has no shortage of megalomaniacs who suffer from the Jehovah complex. The belief that they are God's gift to their country. And you can have a Jehovah complex as a hotel manager. You can have a Jehovah complex in your own office, where nobody questions you. A good leader must be questioned, because nobody knows everything. I do not know how many of you have watched the movie Gandhi. If you haven't, I urge you to go and watch it. I've watched it 10 times. And there is a very important episode in that movie as I draw to my conclusion. And in that movie is about the life of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, whom you know as Mahatma. And India is still one. But there is danger of the split between India and Pakistan on the basis of religion, Hinduism and Islam. And there are 2 leaders, Jawaharlal Nehru, who is Hindu, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who is Muslim. And there is the Mahatma, who is considered the leader, the moral leader, who could, if he wanted, have been the first Prime Minister of India. And this is what he does. He calls both leaders and tells Nehru, I want you, Pandiji, you used to call him Pandiji, short or endearment term for Pandit Jawaharlal. Pandiji, I want you to stand down for Jinnah. For Jinnah to be the first Prime Minister of India and to name every head of department a Muslim. And this is what Pandit says. Gandhiji, I accept. But the people out there, because there is animosity, and this is what Jinnah says. It is either independent India or independent Pakistan or a civil war. The rest is history. You know what happened between 1947 and 1948. 1 million dead. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, otherwise known as the Mahatma, did not hold any office. But he was a moral leader. Ezekiel, leadership is not about titles. Titles come and go. And I want to tell you one of the reasons why Africa has never united. Then I'll sit down. It happened in 1965, and the great Tanzanian leader records it, Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere, the 1965 meeting at which all African leaders were invited, and they were all there. They are now presidents and prime ministers and ministers. And Diosagie von Nkrumah says, we unite for the sake of Africa. And unity never came. And Mwalimu says, as they were going out, he heard some of the leaders saying, thank God, Africa is not united. I would have stopped being a president. I would have stopped being a prime minister. Our love for titles is what destroys us. And speaking again, on the 7th day of March 1997, on the 40th anniversary of Ghana's independence, Nyerere once again said, Kwame wanted us to unite. Some of us wanted it to be gradual. Kwame was right. He was right because we did not unite at the right time. People have now gotten used to titles. But when I go out, he said, nobody cares about my Tanzanian-ness or Liberian-ness or Rwandan-ness or Ugandan-ness. They don't care at all. They only care about our Africanness. Today, when I hear my good friend Yoweri Kaguta Museveni talk about it, I agree. In 1986, he was saying those things, and he is beginning to say them again. The spirit has re-entered him again. But like all good answers, he must choose when to bequeath. A good leader must also know mentorship and when to decrease so that others may increase. When you are a good leader, you must begin to decrease, and the others must begin to increase, because there is no recompense for a leader than to produce a student who surpasses him or her. And you are not successful until your successor succeeds. Brothers and sisters, we have no excuse. We must lead, and lead in the right direction. And I want to conclude with this famous speech, seldom referred to, delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. at a high school in 1967. And this is what LMK said, that when it falls upon your lap to be a street sweeper, sweep the streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep the streets like Beethoven composed music. Sweep the street like Shakespeare composed poetry. so that when the host of the world and the host of the earth see you, they'll say, there lived a great street sweeper. And he said, Father, if you cannot be the bush, if you cannot be the tree, be the bush. If you cannot run, walk. If you cannot walk, crawl. But keep on moving. This is the message that we have. We have no excuse. The time is now for us to rise and rise again, because Africa must not continue to have excuses. Let us go out now. Go to Kigali in Rwanda. Go to Lome in Togo, to Monrovia. Go to Accra in Ghana. Go to Abidjan. Go to Maseru. Go to Maputo. Go to Zimbabwe, Harare. Go to all these capitals of the world, whether it is in Khartoum, whether it is in South Sudan, the home of that great man, John Garang Di Mabior. Go there and begin to make change, because you can only make change when you change yourself. There is a beautiful Kiswahili saying, Jishinde ushinde, conquer yourself. It is only upon personal conquest that you can conquer the world. God bless you all.
I'm a great believer in unity. I believe in the old adage, unity is strength. I mean, this is truly, it is strength. And the human race would be much stronger if we were united. We would get rid of a lot of problems in the world if we could be united. And therefore, the human race must move towards unity. And continents like mine, a country like Tanzania must move towards greater unity, continents must move towards greater unity, and the human race must move towards unity.
It's African Union now. There is no time to waste. We must unite or we perish.